Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. Today is a special episode. We are in the mirrors talking about some of our favorite episodes from the past. Rob, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm good. It's good to be able to take a chance to, like you say, look in the mirrors, look at some of our favorite episodes. First up from me was my number one pick when I kind of look back and think about when Pitlane Paul came on to tell us about the fantastic season that was Brawn GP. And just a quick explanation of who Pitlane Paul is if you're finding the dirty side for the first time listening to this episode. He is a friend of the pod that has worked in Formula One since the late 90s, BAR, through Honda, through Brawn GP, through Mercedes, and then eventually working with Valtteri. So this guy's been there, done it, got the t-shirt, phones us in race reviews, and you're about to listen now to when he took an entire episode to tell us about the Cool Runnings equivalent, the Formula One story of Brawn GP. Box. Last time you were on, Paul, you made we were kind of reviewing everything you'd done, and you made one kind of comment to us, I think after the episode, where you basically said that 1 year, Brawn, that should be made into a Hollywood film, and it was the most surreal season. And that's what we've got you back to talk about this week. We're going to take a look at the Brawn GP year. I was saying to Brian before you came on, I remember the season. I remember watching it. I remember watching Button win it and it was amazing. But I've never gone back and really looked at it again, like the way I have this past week, knowing that you were coming on. Things that I hadn't really paid attention to right from the start. So before we get into the actual season, really, there's lots of stories about how the fact it never nearly happened as a team. You know, Honda, I think, were pulling out because of the financial crisis. And I'll hand over to you because I don't know the details. All I've done is read Wikipedia, which basically looks like Ross Brawn and his cronies did a management buyout of Honda and kind of just decided to go for it. But I guess that must have been kind of a little bit nervous times for you guys when you were going through all of that.
Yeah, it was. So, I mean, it's very similar to the season we're about to do. There was a huge regulation change. And we'd run this Honda works team for 2 years. I mean, it was awful. The car was pretty disgraceful. I mean, the 2008 season, and we actually got a podium at Silverstone, which again for a team like that, it was incredible. We were so bad. So at the end, it's sort of the end. It was the 4th of January. I can actually remember the dates here. One of the engineers phoned me up randomly. He was sort of like, have you heard anything about Honda pulling out of F1? And I was like, don't be stupid. That, of course not. That's crazy. Like, then the next morning, my dad, who was actually on holiday in the USA at the time, phoned me up and he was sort of like, have you seen the news? Like, no, I was still in bed, so no. He's sort of like, oh, well, you better turn it on. I turned it on and it was breaking news. Honda pull out of F1 with immediate effect. There's no better way to be told you're out of a job than turning on Sky Sports News in the morning. So I was literally, so yeah, it was like obviously a lot of phone calls to people, what the hell's going on? And yeah, and it was Honda, and Honda got a bit of a track record of this anyway. And it's just the way the Japanese work. So they thought they could just pull out, close the doors, everyone go home, you ain't got a job. Needless to say, that you can't do that in most of the world. You probably can in Japan, but in most of the world you can't do that. So there's the redundancy thing. There's the notice period. So it was like a week of no one really knowing what's going on. The car was designed for the following year, and it was sort of like everyone's working towards that. All of a sudden, are we not racing? So you're exactly right. Ross Brawn, who'd only been at the team a year, he came in start of 2008. He took a year off after Ferrari, so had a sabbatical, and came to us. He was pretty determined to find us a buyer. He was quite confident that somebody would. But it went on till middle of January, end of January. We had Carlos Slim, the Mexican. He was heavily linked, but nothing really happened. And then the teams went testing. So they all went testing. So it is not like it is now. That I think there were 5 pre-season tests back in 2009. So all the teams that were going testing, we were sort of sat at the factory like, well, what do we do? Then Mercedes came and offered us an engine, which is not as easy as just putting an engine in the back of the car. You got to modify the chassis, the way the engine studs are. So it's a little bit of work, but we had an engine, so things are looking promising. And then it was the third test, second to last test, Barcelona. So they were like, can you drive a truck down to Spain? Like, yeah, no problem my side. It was literally like, well, okay, off you go type thing. And it was, and I'm not even joking. It was, we'll phone you halfway down and let you know if to continue or turn around and come home. So
Seriously?
it was, oh yeah. I can't even tell you like how crazy it was. So we drove, got halfway down, and we got a phone call. And I thought it was a joke. I guess they said, we're going to be called, we're going ahead, we're going to be called Brawn GP. I was like, what? Like, they said, yeah, Brawn GP. And I'm like, okay, it's got to be some sort of joke, Got down to the circuit, gonna all security guy, no, Brawn, getting into the circuit. Oh, we're Brawn GP. Who? Brawn GP? Brawn GP? Like, Brawn Honda. Oh, okay, go on in. So we got there, got to the garage. A lot of other teams came and helped us set everything up because, like I've said, F1's quite a family thing. So everyone was happy to see us all back, and happy to help us out. So, yeah, we sort of put the garage together with the little equipment we had because we couldn't spend any money. Needless to say, we didn't have any money. We didn't have nothing. And if we did continue, yeah, it was going to be carnage.
So
financially.
You've missed out on the first 2 tests altogether. You've just been sat at
Three
home
tests.
watching the 3 tests. Sorry, you've watched
3
them.
tests, yeah.
You've watched the others doing all their tests. You're sat back at the garage wondering what the hell's going on. You get down there with the car now with a new name, with a new engine bolted in the back. I think I'm starting to understand what you said about you couldn't make this up, because this doesn't sound like a recipe for success to go on and do anything good in this season now.
Well, no, it doesn't. And, I was only we normally take, say, 4 trucks testing. So there was 2 of us went down first, me and one other, just to sort the garage out. And then we had the truck come down, and again, the design of the car was really unique because you can't get a more basic. It looked like an amateur car. So this truck came down with this yellow and black stripe on the side, with Brawn GP. I remember looking at it thinking, oh my god, like what is this? Then we wheeled this white car, this black and yellow stripe on it with just Brawn GP on the side. It was like, right, man, that's just this just doesn't look good. And so
I'm getting a feeling of kind of like Cool Runnings when they turn up with their second-hand bobsleigh.
Oh, yeah, no, it was. We got people like the other team sort of looking like not nasty giggling at us, but giggling at us like, oh yeah, you guys got a hard year, and we're like, yeah, don't get me wrong, it's we're continuing for the year, which is great, but it's just sort of like, it's gonna be such a long year. This, look at it, we got no money, we can't, I know it sounds crazy, but we're reusing bolts from the, you don't reuse bolts in Formula One. You use a bolt, you throw it away, you just put a brand new one in there. That's all gone. We're washing nuts and bolts and reusing them. So yeah, we went out to do the first run, and yeah, everyone sat there, headphones on. Jensen goes out, goes round, does 2 or 3 laps, comes in about half a second quicker than anyone else has been over any stage of the testing. And we're like, oh, I didn't expect this. And the first 2 days of the test, when we didn't do great mileage, we weren't putting in big mileage. We were concentrating more on the reliability side and bedding the engine in. So even though Jensen went quick, obviously times got quicker, we didn't really do a lot of quick lap time simulations until day 3.
What is a lot of mileage? What do you mean? Help the listeners out here with some kind of what did you do versus what would a lot of teams do?
So you would on a good day testing, you do maybe 130, 140 laps. Now you can do different simulations. If you're a new team, if you're in a position we were, what you're going to concentrate on is just long runs. You're going to send the car out and do long runs. How does the tire wear work with the car? You've got a new engine, so all you're doing is gathering data. You can go out, with testing, you can go out, take all the weight out of the car, take the fuel out of the car, and do quick laps. You're learning nothing. So the first couple of days is just conditioning the car, making sure it's okay. Now, we are only doing 110 laps in a day. If you think the average race is maybe 60, 70 laps, we're still doing on that basis, you're doing that daily. That's a lot of mileage. You got to bear in mind that the other teams have got, what are we looking at, 4, 8, 12, probably got another 12 days on us of that similar mileage. So we are more than on the back foot than you'll ever believe. So day 3, we decided to do a lot of qualifying runs. So a lot of other teams had done qualifying runs, so we sort of had an idea where we would be realistically. Jensen ended up a whole second faster than anyone else had been, same as Ruben. So we were like, oh my God, like this car is mental.
You've got a rocket ship.
Well, I think just odds wise, and I know you have a different system again in the USA. I think we were something crazy like 5,000 to 1 to win the drivers and the constructors championship. Before we went to Barcelona, it was, you can make a lot of money if you bet at the right time. No one thought, nobody expected that year to happen. You wouldn't bet on it. Like, you just wouldn't. It's not possible. The story I'm telling you, which it is possible, I know, but at that stage it wasn't. So yeah, we finished in Barcelona quite bizarrely confident. Went to Jerez, so for Spain, and did another, like the last preseason test. Yeah, we didn't really unleash the car there. We worked together more on long runs, but we sort of had an idea that when we flew to Australia for the first race, we actually had a relatively good chance of winning. And for a team that, by that stage, we'd won as a team, as an organization, one race, and that was 2005 with Jensen in Budapest when we were BAR Honda. So to be going into a race in a situation we were in, sort of favourites to win it, was a little bit like, nah, yeah, okay, this is weird. This shouldn't be happening. So yeah, that sort of brings us up to the first race, where we were put in the very last garage. So I think I said in the last episode, the garages go in championship order. So where you finish in the championship is where your garage would be. Now we sort of argued that we'll actually be finished in whatever place with Honda, so we should be there. They're like, well, you're a new team. You didn't register yourselves at the end of the season. So as far as we're concerned, you're a new team. So we were like dumped right down the very far end. And had the least space. And again, when you're used to having a lot of space, it's just, hard work. But we couldn't take any equipment anyway because we didn't have the money. And again, everything's flown there. So, Australia was a little bit bizarre, to be honest with you, because we had a thing called a double diffuser, which is one of the key elements of this year. So the technical regulations came out. And you'll see that this year. You'll see a lot of this at the start of the year. Teams protesting other cars because they read in the rules like there's a loophole, and then they can design something. I think you said in the last episode you were talking about the way teams, and you use the word cheat to get an advantage. And I like that it is cheating, but it's also, you're exactly right. Your teams are going to find a way to bend the rules, and. You gave some very good examples. I can remember in the 90s, McLaren having a car with 2 brake pedals, a pedal that controlled the front brakes and the rear brakes. And it was, you're exactly right. Teams will always find a way. Well, I'm pretty sure it was us, Williams and Toyota, who had said, well, we can run this double diffuser. Now, I'm not an aerodynamic god whatsoever. I'll try and explain the double diffuser as best I can. So when the wind goes under the car, the diffuser's there to give the car more downforce. So I wrote this down because if I try and remember it, I'm going to get it all wrong. And I'm going to try and make this sound simple because I genuinely still don't really understand it. There are people who've been to university for years who can tell you, like, I don't know how this thing works. But the diffuser is at the rear of the car and designed to get downforce using the airflow under the car. So we had a different central channel to its diffuser with the shape of the structure being used to create advanced type of double-decker design. What that means, I couldn't tell you.
I have no idea what you're saying, but I'm so happy that even you don't know because I spent... Go on, Brian.
No, I was going to say, Rob and I spent so much time this week reading about it, thinking about it, doing research about it. I also saw that Toyota and Williams had them. We talked about everyone was up in arms about the double diffuser, and then Rob and I got together. Like, I still don't know what it means.
Yeah,
I mean, I know where it is. It is, like you said, we see the picture. It's at the back of the car at the bottom. It channels air a certain way, and somehow it's probably better than a single diffuser, but not as good as you can make a triple diffuser. I mean, I have no idea. I don't know. It's so cool.
Sorry, I was going to say the best description I found that was almost kind of like diffusers for dummies was that you'd basically left a hole open in the top of your diffuser where everybody else had kind of left it flush against the underside of the car. And this hole allowed air to escape through it and create almost a secondary diffuser situation with the underside of the car that was above it. So you hadn't actually got two diffusers, I don't think. I'm not sure. But it was a clever way of letting the air go through it that simulated having them. And that's what all the other people were in uproar about, you guys going, you shouldn't be allowed this, you're not allowed to have that.
It was almost a double-decker effect. So, look, what I am going to do is I am going to speak to some of my aero friends back at Mercedes. I'm going to try and get a double diffuser for dummies thing, so you can read it on your next episode. So, like, I'd be interested how it works. I still don't know. Like, they were saying to me, like, you know, when you take the car down for scrutineering, they're like, you know, the press and the photographers are all going to try and get a photograph of the diffuser. Or, you know, each team has their own photographer. Professional photographer who they'll pay to take photographs of the car. So needless to say, once our car went in public, everyone was like, well, we need to get a photograph of the Brawn. So you're told when you take the car down, stand at the back of the car and cover up the diffuser. And like, I got no idea what, I know it's at the back of the car, but I mean, someone could point out what it is or what I'm meant to be protecting. And so, yeah, I will get more on a double diffuser. I genuinely don't know what it is. What I do know, after Melbourne, it was heavily protested, as all things do. And in race 2 in Malaysia, it was heavily protested by Renault, Ferrari in shock horror, Red Bull. And
just before we jump ahead to like those other races, the reason, I think, just so that for new listeners out here, that the reason it got so heavily protested is because this double diffuser was like your turbocharged secret sauce that was giving you this extra downforce and ridiculous speed through corners. And you took a 1-2, didn't you, in Australia? Jensen won it and Rubens second.
Well, it did. I was going to come on to Australia. So Australia's a really special one because, again, we travelled, no clue. We sort of knew we had a good chance, but you're realistic. You go into every race and you're realistic of the expectations and like, yeah, okay, we should do okay. Practice, we sort of like, you know, we potted around in free practice. Practice 1, 4th and 6th with Rubens and Jensen. Top 2 were Williams with their double diffuser. So Williams were quick. So it's obviously angered a lot of people. Practice 2, we moved a little bit closer to the Williams. Rubens in P2, Jensen in P5. But Williams is still the team to beat. So, okay, fantastic. So qualifying, we just let the car out of its shackles and we got a 1-2 in qualifying by probably a second. Like, we were just like, oh my God, dream. You know, it was, you can't even begin to imagine how, like, as a team, we're like, how is this happening? What is going on? Like, how have we gone from being where we were to being 1-2? So after the race, it all gets a little bit more surreal from this point. So after the race, one of our marketing people came up to me and they were like, you know, here's an envelope, don't open it. We might announce something in the morning. And if we do, we'll need to put these stickers around. I was like, okay, no, whatever, you know. So it was a Sunday morning. I can remember being stood at the back of the garage, and the paddock in Australia, it's in the middle of a park. So it's quite parky. You sort of sat there in between the trees, looking down, and Richard Branson comes walking towards us. And then next thing, marketing like, oh, okay, we can stick at the garage now. And Richard Branson walks past me into the garage, and then turns out Virgin and Richard Branson decided to sponsor the team. Which was huge for us because, like I said, we had no money. You know, we had no money, and now one of the biggest people in the world financially is backing us. And you know, I think honestly, it was on the back of if we got a 1-2 in qualify. I don't know the negotiation, but naturally, like we're all in the garage, like, what is going on? Like this is so. Yeah, Richard Branson rocks up, and then we get to race day. We're 1-2. We've never been 1-2 on the grid before. This is uncharted territory for us. We've got hardly no staff there. We're running on limited everything. So, you know, you've got teams like Red Bull who have got finance that control, McLaren, Ferrari, you know, these massive teams. We're going to ask them if we can borrow glue to like glue bits of the car together. No, not a joke. It's literally how it was. Like, and we're 1-2. Like, okay, you know, let's see how we go on. Realistically, we're not gonna last it. Yeah, you know, we'll be okay. Race started. Barrichello had a shocker. He dropped down to about P9. Jensen, off he went. And as the race went on, Jensen just continued going. We're like, he's going to win this. Rubens got back up to P4 behind Kubica and Vettel, who both then crashed in turn 1. Rubens got up to P2. The race finished behind the safety car. Shock horror. That would be great if that happened a few weeks back. And so that's the last I'm going to mention it. So, and we literally got a 1-2, and it was this disbelief in the team. No one could believe what was happening. And I remember we went, being in the end garage, and the podium is right at the other end of the pit lane. As we're running down to the podium, every other team, the entire workforce of every team is out in the pit lane just applauding us.
Really?
And it was like, everyone was so happy for it. Everyone was like, that is incredible what you guys have achieved. And, we were like, every team's going to catch up. We've got no money. Teams are developing the car all year. So, let us have our bit of glory. We're quite happy. We're like, wow, we it was insane. And like I said, every team's so happy for you. It is that industry where, as much as there is rivalry between teams, from our level is workforce. You don't have that. You're just happy for people. And considering what we went through, we were pretty happy. And we packed up, had a couple of beers. I can't really remember exactly a night out, not through being drunk. I just genuinely can't remember it. We were probably drunk. I'll go down that one. But we then flew to Malaysia for round 2. And this is all where it gets a little bit dark because we got called down to a team meeting on a Monday morning. So we landed Monday, got down, got in the hotel, got sorted. Then we called into a team meeting where we were then given lists of all the people who were going to be made redundant from the team because they had to call the workforce because they couldn't afford it. As a race team, we were safe. We were needed, so we were safe. But out of 700 employees, we lost 270 in the redundancies. So not a million miles off half of the workforce, half of the people who I've never seen to this day, good friends since then I've never seen. And it's I can remember everyone sat there and there was a lot of anger, a lot of tears, a lot of sadness, as you well imagine, and just the reality of what all of this meant. Again, Richard Branson then came to the hotel, still a little bit worse for wear than from the night before, questioned why we were all looking really sad. We explained the situation. He just put his credit card behind the bar and so you guys have a drink and, don't worry how much you put on the card. And I was one of the saddest days. And it was the reality of what was happening to the team, where every other team was growing. We had to cut our entire workforce back. The knock-on effect is there's no updates coming for the car. We've got nothing for that car. That car is what we got. Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, Toyota, Williams, they had money so they can develop the car. So we won the first race. Whoopie-doo. We might go well in Malaysia. Realistically, it's going to peter out. Not necessarily true, because the first 7 races, we actually won 6 of them. Australia, Malaysia, Bahrain, Spain, Monaco, which again, we've got to bear in mind, we've not won races. We don't know what we're doing. And then Turkey. The only one we didn't win was China, which was a wet race. We never run the car in the wet, so we got no data for the car in the wet. So,
I wanted to ask you about this because when you look at the stats of the season, it kind of nicely falls into there were 17 races that year, but you can sort of draw a line after Turkey, right? The first 7 races. What's going through your mind there? Because each one you must be thinking the others are going to catch us up soon. The others are going to catch us up soon. And like you say, you're steamrolling through everyone, and Jensen is on fire. I think he's won. He's come 3rd in China and won the rest, and Rubens has done a great job backing him up points wise. So you're kind of that feeling of this has got to end soon. Is there a point here where you suddenly pinch yourself and go, "We could do this, boys"?
Do you know? No, because the one thing, as the race is going on, you know the team's getting closer. So how it tends to work in F1 is each team will have maybe 3 major upgrades a year, where they'll go in the wind tunnel and they'll develop an upgrade package. So when you watch races and someone will say they have an upgrade package in Spain, it won't just be they'll put a new wing on it. It won't just be they'll put a floor in it. They'll have developed an entire new bodywork system for that car that works together. And just purely based on the time taken to make each component, it's very rare for that all to come through at one time at each races. So they'll plan a bit will be a major upgrade, which is again around the time of Turkey when Red Bull really started to pump money into the season. Back then, Red Bull they hadn't won a championship. They were it was their chance for a first championship. So for them, they were in the same position as us. We're like, actually, hang on a minute, we're in for both championships here. So they were chucking money at the car, and we couldn't. Ironically, we did have an upgrade package, which made the car worse.
No,
which is probably
really?
why we didn't. So I mean, don't get me wrong. After Russia, which was race 7, Jensen didn't win another race all year. So the guy, he never won another race. So
he
that
only
was
got
it.
he only got one more. Look at this, he got one more podium. Let alone win. He got one more podium that year.
It is. So back then as well, what you got to remember as well back then is the point system was different. I know you touched on this also in a previous episode. To win a race, it was 10 points, not 25 as it is now. So the points went first place 10 points, second place 8 points, third place 6 points, so on to 8th place, which is 1 point. So even though like Jensen didn't win another race, you probably all sat there thinking, well, I don't understand how you can have a successful season. Well, points, if you're finishing 4th and the next driver's winning, he's only really pulling 5 points back on you. So it's not like not like it is now. There's not such. You think now if a driver doesn't finish a race and someone wins, they can pull 25 points back on you. So it was a lot. I can't say easier. That's not fair, but you can't say easier because you only get points at 8th place, and the points are a little bit less than they are nowadays. So sort of. Even though we were at that point in 7th place, we were still in a strong position. We had a lot of points, and it's going to take teams. They are going to catch us, but if you think you win 7 races nowadays, a team can catch you in 4 races. So we were we weren't quietly confident, but we knew that we were in a strong position.
Well, we know, we'll get more into, as you mentioned, Red Bull, and we'll talk a little bit about Seb and some of the challenges that he starts throwing at you guys. But I have a question.
Go for it.
You mentioned a couple of things, right? So in the year prior, about midway through the year, Honda really started pumping the money to the future car. And you had these new regulations coming for 2009, which kind of allowed things like the double diffuser to exist. Do you see any parallels to this year? And I'm not saying a particular team, but for someone like Haas, who threw all of last year's development into this car. And then I keep hearing rumors that Ferrari found some magic unlock in the regulations. And, then everyone says, oh, because, you read Twitter and who knows what's actually a rumor and someone just making it up in their pajamas. But so, you look at these things, new regulations, teams, sort of stopped at some points, with the exception of maybe Mercedes and Red Bull and a few others, really focused a lot on this year. Are we ripe for some team coming from the midfield and putting on a massive challenge this coming year?
Yes. Look, do you know what? It's such an unknown, and I do mean that. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they're not. I'm not saying they are. It's such a massive unknown. You've got to look and think teams with the money are arguably going to do a better job. Do I think Haas are going to come through in win races? No. Right. Do I think Haas are going to be likely scoring podiums? I've got to be honest and think no. Do I think Haas are going to be scoring points and battering a little bit further up? I think yes. And I think the smaller teams who, you got to look, last year, Red Bull and Mercedes put a lot of resources into last year, whereas they didn't want to because they want to concentrate on this car. They sort of had to. I think in the middle of last year, you heard a lot of times they say, have you got the upgrades coming for the car? And like Toto and the guys were like, well, no, we're not upgrading this car. And then later in the season, you're like, well, you're having upgrades. You sort of had to do that because, you've got to fight for the championship. Right. So how much is that hurt Red Bull and Mercedes? I don't think, again, you're not going to know. It's a great question. And the reason I sort of stall on it is you would expect Mercedes, Red Bull to be at the top as 2 teams. You expect that because they got the money. with the money comes the staff, and the cost cutting that came in is working, but companies are being clever with the way that they get around the cost cap. So everyone's sort of like, oh, Mercedes and Red Bull are going to struggle, Ferrari are going to struggle because they spend X amount of money. There are ways, cute little ways that you can get around items on a cost cap. So yeah, look, I want Alfa Romeo to do well next year. Mercedes is still my team in my heart, so I sort of like, if Alfa Romeo are not winning, I want Mercedes to win. I'd love to see Haas up there. I'd love to see McLaren and Ferrari battling at the front. I'd love to see a season where you have maybe 7 or 8 different winners and different teams. I'd love to see a season where you can go into the final race and have maybe 3-4 drivers who can win the championship and 3 teams that can win the constructors. Is that going to happen? Look, who knows? And I think that's the exciting part about these regulation changes. It's so unique. No one knows. The cars just look nothing like, they look crazy. I'm really excited to see how it all goes. I don't actually know myself. That's the honest answer. I don't. I'd love to give you more of an answer than that. I genuinely can't.
And when you talk about, go on, Brian.
Sorry, just to close that before we get back. I just want to say, if when you talk to Valtteri, he should know that Alfa Romeo won the SAP Stats Viagra Highest Riser and the Constructors Championship Award in our predictions. So just put that in the back of your mind there. Sorry, Rob, back to you.
No, that's fine. It's a great little segue what you were just talking about, though, in terms of the other teams fighting for each other and maybe a bigger point, more of them fighting for the points. Because now going back to the Brawn season, myself and Brian were just talking about this before you came on. There's a lot of like ifs and maybes that when you look back of what could have happened in sport. And that's why we love sport, because you can always say, oh, if that had happened, or what if that had happened? Well, it didn't, but it makes a great talking point, which is that Williams and Red Bull started to get their package better than you guys, I think, and they started taking more points. The problem was neither of them could get the consistency. So sometimes Red Bull were winning and Vettel started making a charge, and then Williams would peg them back. There's a website that we found that's kind of got the graph of the positions tracked out over the season. Obviously, you guys go off like a rocket. So, Brawn and Jensen, poof, straight up to the top. And then as you don't plateau, like you say, he keeps grabbing points. Jensen keeps getting 4th and 5th and 6th place finishes just to keep those points ticking over. The others keep having like a shoot up, and then Williams take it, and then Red Bull take it, then Williams take it. If one of those two could have just maintained a solid challenge, I think it could have been a lot more squeaky bum time come Brazil, but they didn't. And I guess... there's no point probably going into unless you've got some highlights you'd like to go over on those for the Turkey through Brazil. I'd love to hear you talk about when did you guys really start thinking that you were going to win it, and then what was it like as you got to Brazil?
Well, no, to be fair, there's only really 2 races in between there in Brazil that are really relevant to us, in all fairness, and they were Valencia. So Valencia was a street circuit, and it's where Barrichello, he actually got a win in Valencia. Jensen 7th. So, Jensen only got 2 points from that weekend, but the 10 points for Rubens, again, from a constructor's point of view, that was pretty huge. But we were really not struggling. Like you said, we were getting points, but, we were sort of like, we've had a good time. We ain't holding on to this. And that was race 11. So 6 races left. At that point, Jens was 19 points ahead of Sebastian, and the team only 23 and a half. I can't remember where the half points came from. It might have been China. I can't remember. But the team only 23 and a half points. So again, with that distance left, even with the reduced points, that's still a very easy target for the teams below us to get to. Italy was race 13. Now, Italy was the best race of the season for us. And if you're going to say anything about this season, Italy was really the race where that pretty much made us think we can win this year. Because again, we were struggling, qualified 5th and 6th. We decided I'm pretty sure we reset the car to the Australia spec with the bodywork as well. So when I said we put a kit on it that made it worse, in my head, and I think we made changes to the car and almost sent it back to what we raced in Melbourne. And then, we went on a crazy one-stop strategy, and then came out 1st and 2nd after all the pit stops with Lewis Hamilton behind us. He crashed towards the end of the race again. Then the race finished behind a safety car. Amazingly, we got a 1-2, Rubens and Jensen, which weirdly, this is a good stat, like stat stats. Are you ready for this one?
I'm most certainly ready.
Yeah, that was the last win by a Brazilian and the last win by a South American in F1, which I question because Sergio Perez, but apparently Mexico isn't South America.
I guess Central America, I would assume, yeah.
Yeah, willing to have an argument on that one with anyone, but I mean, yeah, you guys do that between yourselves, but there's a good little stat.
I love that stat. I love that
exactly.
stat. Can I ask a Rubens question? Just a Rubens, you're talking about Rubens?
Can, yeah.
I was watching Interlagos this year, and it wasn't during the race, and it wasn't during the sprint. It was either practice or qualifying. And someone made a comment that Rubens' grandma lived like a mile from the track, and she would phone down with weather reports. Is that totally made up malarkey, or what is it?
I genuinely couldn't tell you. Yeah, okay. I can ask him, but yeah, I couldn't actually tell you if that's completely true.
We're going to assume it's true. We're going to assume it's true, and that Rubens' grandma was the weather report. And,
I was hoping that Paul was picking the phone up to Rubens' grandma.
Yes, rain coming. Hello.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. If I had his grandma's number, that could, invoke more questions than answers. So no. Yeah, going back, Red Bull finished 8th with Vettel, and Webber didn't finish, so it gave us a huge point haul. Like you said, Rob, it was sort of around then where we're sort of thinking, actually, we can win this. And you're right, it still doesn't really cross your mind. You don't get confident about it because why would you? Singapore was the next race. Webber failed to finish. Vettel was 4th. Jensen 5th. Barrichello 6th. So, like you said, we're still getting points, and the way the points were, we weren't getting as many points as them, but we were chipping away. Jensen's now 25 points ahead. The team now 42.5. 3 races to go. Japan next. Webber didn't score points. Vettel won the race. Rubens P7, Jensen P8. So again, we're not getting, big points. So we go in for 2 races to go. Vettel 16 points behind Jensen. The team now 35.5. So it's pretty easy going into Sao Paulo. We needed half a point to win the Constructors' Championship, and Jensen needed to finish 5th or higher if Vettel won. So we've never been in that situation. We went to Brazil and we're like, wow, this is crazy. We had a Brazilian beer company, and I can't pronounce the name, so I apologize to any Brazilian fans here, but it was something like Itapavia or something. But I can remember they came in, stick it inside the car, and then put this fridge of beer in the VIP area. I'll come back to the fridge of beer later on because it's quite relevant to the ending of the story. It sort of probably ruins the story a little bit as well, because it was quite a weird weekend. Vettel had to finish 3rd or higher. So his target was easy. He had to finish 3rd or higher, to give himself any chance. Jensen just had to finish 5th or higher. So it was like, okay, this is like a crazy weekend. Qualifying at Sapstat. Are you ready for it again?
I am. Wait, do you want the music?
Well, let's go for it. Yeah, I'll go for it.
Sapstats.
That's good. Qualifying of Brazil 2009 is still the longest ever qualifying session in F1 history. It lasted 2 hours and 41 minutes. That's because just after FP1, it was raining, it was wet anyway, but literally a tropical storm came right through the circuit, and it was the conditions were staggering. So a bit like Spa this year, you couldn't send the cars out. Brazil dries and drains quite quickly, so you're quite confident that you might be okay. So long and short of it, Vettel went out in qualifying 1, which we were like, he was 15th, 16th, but Lewis, he had a crash in quali 2, which put him to the back of the grid. So he was 15th. So we're like, geez, like this is incredible. Jensen went out in qualifying 2. He went out in 14th place. So we're like, okay. Barrichello, pole position. So we were like, Brazilian guy, Rubens is the great. It's like being on pole position, fantastic. So we were quite excited going into race day. It was, like I said, we were on cloud 9. It was like Webber, I think, was just behind Barrichello. So you had a Red Bull in the mix. But yeah, we were sort of, we only need half a point. So we're that honestly was probably the last we thought about it. The race started. Barrichello controlled the first stage of the race. After the first sort of pit stops, he got jumped by Webber, who was quicker. So Barrichello second, Webber first. So we're all a little bit gutted because that was Ruben's chance to win the race. Jensen got up to P9 after the first lap, so he was coming through quite nicely. Second round of stops, Jensen pitted, Vettel jumped in. So Jensen's now seventh. And I think Vettel was sixth. And so we're like, oh, God, this isn't, again, we're focused on Barrichello. No one's really thinking of Jensen. Like, we know he's coming through the field, but we're just thinking, Ruben's got to win his home race. Like, this is, it meant so much to the guy. Of all the people, Lewis Hamilton attempted an overtake on Barrichello and clipped him with his wing, gave Rubens a puncture. Rubens came into pit, came out in P8. That's the most sad I've ever been, I think, in a race. The whole garage was deflated, no pun intended. But we were literally crushed. It was Rubens. Yeah, sorry.
That was pretty good. That was actually pretty good.
It was good. I should have said, yeah. Rubens was crushed, and we were just like, oh, that was his chance. And it was awful. The mood in the garage is the lowest I've ever seen. It was ridiculous. So 4 laps on the end, Webber's winning the race. Kubica was in second, Lewis in third, Vettel fourth, Jensen Button's in fifth, and Barrichello eighth. So yeah, we were pretty down. 2-3 laps on the end. People sort of like just sauntering the garage sulking. We had another team man called Ian Clatworthy, and we used to call him the Bear. Now, he was about 6'6", arguably the same wide. He was a colossal human being. Like, I remember him stood up in front of the garage just saying, guys, wake up. We're literally about to win both championships. And no one had focused on the fact that because Rubens had dropped down to eighth, that he sort of like promoted Jensen up to fifth place, is what he needed. So all of a sudden, there's literally a lap and a half from the end. It's the first time we actually realised, like, holy smokes, we're about to win. Like, it was, and then like the whole, it was, honestly, I'm not even exaggerating. It was bizarre. That's the way the race finished. I tried to find a photograph, send you guys. There's a photograph of the Bear, Ian Clatworthy, lay in the middle of the pit lane, just crying his eyes out. And I was stood on top of him, and it was like,
so
it was.
Sorry, just to backtrack. Just to back. So I love this. I love this, Paul, because you would never get this from the outside looking in. Here you are, a lap and a half away from securing both titles, and you guys, all of your heads are in your hands because you're so invested emotionally in Rubens that the fact he's not going to win his home Grand Prix is just wiped the entire garage out, and then it takes someone to go, guys.
Yeah. No, it's a great
picture. We're
point.
about to win both.
Yeah, I generally think it goes back to what you said before, Rob, where I don't think anyone really believed that we would ever win a championship. So it was sort of like, it's almost as if no one wanted to believe. That's the wrong words. But it's almost as if we literally just sort of like, okay, like, we're not going to win it. I don't know. And I said it. That's why I mean it's so bizarre because I don't really understand. And I think it was just so fairy tale. It was like, what? No one really. No one actually realised it was going to happen.
So you can literally go 0 to 100 within. Well, just talk us through that last lap, then. What the hell's going on now?
I can't. I mean, I was. I'm not going to say that anything bad about myself. I just remember, like, I was just in tears. I was like, wow, this is like, and there's people like in the garage. It's all like this realization that what you're about to achieve, and like, it was the way that everyone changed. All of a sudden, everyone saw like this look of absolute shock over everyone's face of like, oh my God. And it was, it's so hard to talk about it because I'm thinking back to the way people were. And the only thing I say is complete shock. No one knew what to do. No one knew how to react. I remember, like, I don't even think I went to the pit wall when Jensen crossed because we were just, I don't like Ross. Like, the one thing that always stands out is when Ross Brawn was interviewed. This like, it always gives me a lump in the throat. So they interviewed Ross Brawn straight afterwards, and Ross was just naturally an emotional wreck himself. And he said something along the lines of, "I want people to remember that this championship is also for the people who got made redundant at the start of the year. This is your championship, and please celebrate it." And it was all like, again, that sort of sets a whole range of emotions off. So, yeah, we had this we had this mental celebration of not really knowing what to do. Like we couldn't go to the podium. There was no podium. So we're like, we'll jump around the garage and we don't, the other team's coming down with bottles of champagne and we didn't know how to celebrate. We didn't know what
I wanted to
do.
ask you that because I remember watching it when Jensen won. It was amazing. There's a British guy winning the championship, but of course he finishes 5th. So although he's secured the world championship, he's not going into the little top 3's parking spot for the podium. It was a weird atmosphere because naturally the podium finishers get the TV cameras, but there's also the producer in the ear going, "We need camera on Jensen. We need camera."
Well,
yeah,
and also, I'm sorry, it blows my mind. The beginning of the season, you're driving a truck halfway to the track to find out at the phone call whether you continue or turn back around. And now that's what, February, I think you said, and it's what, usually October-ish with Brazil. And so now you're literally celebrating at one race, both the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship, and you're not on the podium doing it.
No, I'm trying to, and it casts my memory back. I'm sure we went down to the podium to see Jensen, but I'm also thinking we didn't. Because I can remember Jensen coming back in. I can remember Jensen. Like it gets quite sad because Rubens has gone back, and Rubens is sat crying in the drive room with his family. No, he was gutted. He was distraught. So I can remember Jensen coming back to the garage and I'm pretty sure he comes straight from getting out of the car, weighed himself. You have to do that, and then get it. I'm pretty sure he came back to the garage. This is what I mean. Now I'm going to touch on why I think I don't remember this very shortly. I will say that fridge of beer might be the best answer to that. But I can remember Jensen coming back to the garage, and the whole place, like there was champagne being sprayed everywhere, and it was like. I actually think that's the time we saw him. I don't think we went down to the car. And I might find that we did. I don't know. Someone has to go to the car anyway, because you have to go down to the car with your cooling fans. So honestly, the answer is I don't know. But of course, other teams are coming up with bottles of champagne, and we're out of control. We're I can remember sat at the back and I found my dad. I can remember sat there just crying my eyes out, phoning my dad, and just sort of like, it's such an achievement. Like you're a world champion. It's just what and yeah. So I sort of got back in the garage, and everyone was sort of partying, and the guys had just sort of like decided that we're going to empty this fridge of beer, which we did. And that might explain why I can't remember exactly what went on after the race, but we emptied this fridge of beer, and the sponsor company kept bringing it into the garage, and then. We got to about 2 hours after the race. Rubens came out. We had a big photo shoot, and again, the photos are great. Rubens came out. He was just cuddled like Jensen. He cuddled everyone. Everyone was sort of like full of sympathy for his situation. But Rubens Barrichello is one of the greatest men I've ever worked with. When you asked me the first episode about my best driver, is very close between Michael and Rubens actually. Rubens Barrichello is an absolute gentleman. He's an honor to work with, and. Yeah, I know how much that hurt him. So I'll always speak highly of Rubens, especially for that moment. But he just came in and he led the party from that point onwards. He's done his crying. So 2 or 3 hours after the race, we hadn't even started packing up. Like the other teams are packing up. In Brazil, I think I said in my previous episode, Brazil is arguably the worst race to pack up at. It's ridiculous. So we were 2-3 hours behind anyone else. We still managed to get out first. A, because we had no equipment. B, because we had no idea where anything went in the freight. I mean, I do know, and I'm sure I get the police knocking at my door, but we definitely shouldn't have been driving industrial forklifts. But no. We had the biggest party that night. I can remember Ross Brawn still on top of this podium singing. I can remember, is it the Black Eyed Peas? Tonight's going to be a good night.
Yeah.
I think he was up there with microphone blasting that. It was one of those. Honestly, one of those moments in life which, I try to explain to people you can't. And it was in your right after the year you've had and after everything that's gone on for the past 11 months, you were literally, how is this? How has it led to this? 11 months ago, I'm out of a job and, the team's dead. We're gone. We're selling our assets. We're just trying to fund the potential chance of us going to a test, not even a race. You've got to go to a test. So we had nothing. And then 11 months later, we're double world champions. it's the most crazy thing.
How did you guys? Was it good to have wrapped it up in Brazil to have another race in Abu Dhabi to be able to kind of strut your stuff? Or is Abu Dhabi, was it almost something you didn't need because there's nothing else you can do now? You've won everything. I mean, what's the mindset and how did Abu Dhabi go down?
Abu Dhabi was actually quite good. Now, I think when I said in my first appearance, somewhat, James Corden rocked up to do a charity thing called Sport Relief. So we were all quite party and giddy anyway, and we were still, we'd won it. We didn't need to perform. You still need to perform, but for us it was job done. So Abu Dhabi, I can't remember much. I can remember unloading the freight, literally the worst unloading of freight I've ever done in my life. Everything was covered in champagne and beer, and we had no idea what half the equipment was. So, like, that job took maybe 8 hours longer than it would normally, just because you had to clean everything. But we just didn't care. You're riding this wave of emotion. Like, yeah, you can't. And like I said, it was that dream world at that time. You just had no. By the time Abu Dhabi comes, just had no concept of what was going on. We were still just absolutely flying. We were just, like I said, it sounds like I'm blabbering. It was just that dream world and this crazy, like, what have we done? How would that happen? It was like that. Honestly, it's mental.
So Abu Dhabi, I think you close it out with a podium for Jensen, which is kind of nice because it's been a while. That second half of the season, as we already talked about, you really didn't get any, and he had the second in Italy. But I guess to be at least up on the podium after winning the championship must have been really nice. So everyone's celebrating. That must have been the mother of all parties. I know Brazil, you've emptied this fridge of beer, but what happened at the end of the season?
As for the party, I can't tell you. We did.
Not allowed to tell us?
No, I know. Again, I know we did, but I can't actually remember. But anyway, yeah. Look, from that point onwards, as far as the team went, tied us quite nicely into where we are nowadays. Anyway, so we actually got, at that point, the team got bought by Arba Abu Dhabi Group, who were in with Mercedes. So Mercedes then owns 75% of the team with Arba. So the following year, we became Mercedes GP. So Brawn GP existed for one season, had its 100% win championship rate, which is still bizarre. And then we went on to be Mercedes and what we know now as Mercedes. In the first 4 years, so 2010 through to 13, Red Bull won championships. And since then, Mercedes have won every constructors championship since, which if you think back to the team being BAR, that what we started with, a one win before we went off to Brawn GP, to have the success we've had now, it's insane. It's one of those stories whereas Brawn GP will always be so ridiculously special. And like I said, it's a Hollywood movie as far as I'm concerned, and it will get made into a Hollywood movie. And then when you come out the cinema, you would literally be thinking that would never happen. It was a lovely story.
and when it does get made into a Hollywood movie, who plays the role of Paul Harris?
I'd love to say someone really good looking, with a lot of character, a lot of flair. But that would be a gross misjudgment of somebody. So yeah, I would, arguably the Elephant Man would probably just come back. Or no, look, it does need to get made into a story, a proper story, because it was so bizarre, and it was such a privilege to be part of it. And the stories now, even today, reading these back and doing the show with you, makes me smile.
Well, you can see, to be honest, in your face, it's actually been amazing just sitting back and listening to you talk about it. So I mean, you've touched on a number of stats that happened during that season. We know we have a certain friend sat over there who is dying to share some of the stats that he found across the season. So I think we need to hand this over to Brian now. We want to hear the music one more time, but I'm thinking maybe Paul needs to shout the SAP stats at the end. I think it's only right.
I'd like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll do it one more time with the my favorite mariachi version of the song. And
Sap stats.
Yeah,
Yes!
there we go.
Well, I'm done, guys. I'll see you later. That's all I came on for, really.
No, we still need you. We still need you. So just a couple quick notes. This was fascinating to me, right? So the second race of the year, you mentioned it, the Malaysian Grand Prix, and you did talk about, Paul, somewhere where you had half points, and that's where it was. So Jensen won the rain shortened GP from pole, had the fastest lap, and with two wins to start the season, a new constructor. You were only the second constructor to do that since Alfa Romeo in 1950. And so the race was supposed to be 56 laps. It went 31, wasn't 75% distance. So they did the half points. It was only the fifth time at the time in Formula One history that happened. And it had been a while in 2009. It had been since 1991, the Australian Grand Prix. I would say it does not sound like quite the farce we saw this last season in Spa. But we won't get into that. One other stat that I thought was really cool was, Jensen won 6 of the first 7 races of the season. And as we talked about, in Brazil, secured the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship, which you mentioned, this is one of my favorite stats ever. So a 100% championship success rate. No other team has ever done that, nor I don't think ever will do that. One season, won both. And Rubens, as we talked about, won twice, finished third in the championship. And if I did my math and research right, I think he lost second place to Seb in Brazil, as you were mentioning that. So that's where not only did he finish, what was it, 8th or 9th, but he also lost second place in the drivers to Seb at that point, and then took it home. So just an amazing story, an amazing season. And I would say just hearing it from you, and as Rob said, seeing it kind of in your emotions and in your face, just the coolest story. And I would echo the thanks, but we can't let you go there, Paul. We have something new at the Dirty Side, and the Dirty Siders on social are excited for this. It's the 100 Seconds of DRS quiz. It's a rapid fire way to get to know our guests. Some questions are about F1, some are not. Rob, for this one, will you be our 100-second timer?
I have my timer ready. So would you like me to count you in for the moment you can open your DRS flap and go?
We just need to make sure Paul's ready. This is the fastest 100 seconds in Formula One. Are you ready?
Yes.
That's a very positive yes. And we don't have the money. We don't have the money to have a proper set of lights above the track to count you in. So I'm just going to do a 3, 2, 1, and then you're going to be off. So get ready then, Brian and Paul. 3, 2, 1, go.
Paul, if you were a superhero in a superhero movie, would you be the hero or the villain?
Oh, the villain.
Best F1 driver of all time?
Schumacher.
What's your favorite food?
Pot noodles.
What's my favorite food?
Probably not pot noodles.
That is correct, actually. What is your favorite country to visit?
USA.
Oh, fill in the blank. F1 in America is?
Growing.
Another fill in the blank. I will tell blank people about the Dirty Side of the Track podcast.
Oh, lots of.
least favorite television program.
Friends.
Oh, favorite non-motorsport sport.
Football.
Best thing to do on a rainy day.
Watch football.
Sleep in or up early.
Oh, sleep in. Easy.
Coffee or tea?
Tea. I'm British.
Are you playing Wordle?
Yes.
Best racing movie of all time?
Louder.
Favorite musician or musical group?
Oh, no. The Killers.
10 seconds.
Favorite F1 track?
Silverstone.
Is it pronounced GIF or GIF?
GIF.
And what's your favorite cheese?
Double Gloucester.
Stop. I let that one go over by 4 seconds there just to get the cheese in.
You got to get the cheese in. It's the best one.
It is the best one. That was awesome. I'll just start with the thanks and I'll let Rob close us. But Paul, thank you. Thanks for joining us, man. Again, this was tremendous. It's an amazing story. I really, really enjoyed hearing it, and I always appreciate you joining us. And so thank you for your time and your generosity of insights. And Rob, I'll let you take us home.
I really don't have any more I can add to that, because Paul, you're a legend. You're helping out two guys that don't know what they're doing. And thank you again, my friend.
Listen, from my side, as I've said before, you're doing a great job. It's great fun to listen to. the episode about Jim Clark the other day was like, I've done F1 for a long time. I thought that was absolutely phenomenal. And keep doing what you're doing. You say you think you don't know a lot, you know more than you think you're doing. It's genuinely a pleasure.
Actually, one final question. I think you've sided with me on our little side discussion that Schumacher didn't do anything wrong. He knew what he was doing, but he didn't cheat to take Hill out. And you work with the guy, so I value your opinion.
Michael always told me all he had to do was wait. Whenever I used to rip Michael about the fact that he was only a 6-time champion, so he's not having Adelaide in '94, he always laughed and said, well, all he had to do was wait. Did he do it on purpose? Look, I actually loved your argument with that one. It's quite an entertaining one. I mean, if you are right, if you look at the position where the two cars made contact, I get your side, Rob. The position they made contact, you've got to say it was Michael didn't know it was there, or if he did know it was there, Damon should have backed out.
That's enough. You don't need to
No, I want to do the other side.
Look, the one thing I will say is both guys were in it for their first championship. I think Michael probably knew he was in trouble. He's gone to, in my opinion, he went very aggressively over the corner. Damon had no idea the car was damaged, so he's seen the gap and thought that was his moment to go for it. I would just say it was a racing incident. Would I put any blame on Michael? No. Would I put blame on Damon? No. Was it intentional? No.
And on
I
that,
would say,
on music to my ears.
I would say,
you're not allowed to say anything, Brian.
I would say, I think he showed the world what Kobe would then come to symbolize later, where he was going to win, and he knew he was going to win, and he was the best, and he knew how to finish, and he knew how to close, and he knew what he was doing. And so I think that Mamba mentality is really the Schumacher mentality. You heard it here first on the dirty side of the track.
And talking of knowing how to close things out and knowing how to finish things, then thank you ever so much for everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.